Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jude Crocker and I'm here in downtown DC at the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial, and I'm here with Brian. Now unfortunately we were going to do a tour of the museum, which you can see sort of behind us. You can see the atriums over on the left and the right there, just starting to take shape with the museum that's sort of developing and growing underground. Well, unfortunately, we won't be able to do a tour of that today, but we've got Brian here, 13 years of experience, who's going to be able to take us around the memorial and give us some of the history and some of the interesting stories, perhaps, that lie behind some of the names that we've got written on the memorial itself.
Absolutely, thank you, Judy. To give everybody a little bit of history, our organization, National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund, was established in 1984. We dedicated the National Law Enforcement Memorial on October 15th, 1991. At that time, there was about 12,530 names on the wall. Currently, we have 21,183 officers that have been killed in line of duty that are on the wall. We honor all local, state, federal, military, tribal, territorial, and correctional officers on the wall. We have a dual partnership with the National Park Service and our organization to take care of the memorial. We have full-time staff, so the memorial is covered 7 days a week. The memorial itself was designed by Davis Buckley, a DC-based architect, and we'll show you some of the interesting things around the memorial. One of the most prominent parts of the memorial that people really love is the lions. The lion statues weigh each about 3,500 pounds. They were designed by another DC artist, Raymond Caskey. The idea behind the lions was to have a statue at the openings of the pathways of remembrance where the names are actually engraved. The lions stand for the strength and courage and valor of police officers. Across from each adult lion is a set of cubs. On the south side, where we're currently standing, you can see that both of the cubs are asleep. The cubs are representative of the general public. By both cubs being asleep and the lioness watching over them, that's when law enforcement is working to protect the general public, even though the general public isn't aware of it. It's also rushing to their need if they call 911. On the far side of the memorial, you have an aggressive-looking male lion, and one of the cubs is alert. That's representative of the chaotic situations that law enforcement will come to the rescue in. High-speed chases, hostage situations, things like that. The walls themselves are made of a Canadian Adair stone. It was specifically chosen because it has a bluish hue to it, which goes with the law enforcement theme. As you can see, the names are sandblasted into the wall. They go in one giant circle down. So wherever we stop one year, we'll pick up the following year and keep going. In order to find the names, you need to use one of 4 directories that are located at the memorial. At the bottom center of each panel, there's a panel number and a side. You find the panel number inside and then count down the number of lines on that panel. Throughout the year, people will order commemorative wreaths in honor of a fallen officer's birthday or a fallen officer's end of watch date. They can do it right through our website. We come out and place the wreath and then provide a picture to the family member or department or friend that ordered the wreath. So if we go down a little farther, currently our biggest issue is the leaves. Probably the third most iconic part of the memorial, besides the names and the lions, are the trees themselves. They hold their shape all year round. These trees are actually little leaf linden trees. So we're busy in the process of picking up all the leaves that have fallen.
Do they have to be trimmed?
Yes, the National Park Service comes through every April and trims the trees. It's a little bit of a dance because at the same time we have our engravers here every April. It takes about 2 weeks to engrave all of the new names that are on the wall. But the trees only need to be trimmed once a year in order to hold their shape.
Okay.
So on very few occasions, we actually keep names together. One such occasion was the deadliest day in law enforcement history, which was September 11, 2001. 72 officers were killed that day. At the request of the families and the departments, all 72 names were kept together, and they run from panel 9 to panel 23. Since 9/11, of course, you've had other officers that have died from responding to ground zero. 2 years ago, they added new cancers onto the list, and we ended up adding nearly 100 new 9/11 names this past April. Some of the other names that have been kept together, we have 5 of the 6 officers killed by William H. Bonney. I'm sure everybody knows who William H. Bonney, but in case, that's also known as Billy the Kid. They kept those 5 names together at the creation of the memorial to bring out the story of outlaws in law enforcement history. Bonnie and Clyde killed 10 police officers. Babyface Nelson killed 3 FBI agents. The names are engraved to about 100 thousandths of an inch. This doesn't seem like a lot. But at that point, it actually creates a natural shading. So while the names, especially towards the bottom where they start to get more horizontal, it gets more of a natural shading. Every year during Police Week, we do the Candlelight Vigil. It's the Memorial Fund's keystone event of the year. Traditionally, the vigil was held here on the 3 acres that is the memorial. And we would get around 25,000 people. It was very packed.
Right.
Because of the construction of the museum and the event's own success, we've had to move it to the National Mall for the past 2 years. This past May, we had about 30,000 visitors for the Candlelight Vigil. During the year, we'll run a few events each month, ranging from a school class coming to lay a wreath to the FBI National Academy, which visits 3 times a year for their own wreath laying, and that's about 300 people and lasts about an hour and a half. One of the other popular questions is, when was the first officer killed? And it was actually interesting. When the memorial was first created, the original first officer killed back in time was Robert Forsyth, who was a U.S. Marshal, one of the original 13 U.S. Marshals appointed by George Washington. He was killed at a political rally in Augusta, Georgia. He was killed in 1794. To date, he remains still the first federal officer killed in line of duty. He represents one of over 1,000 federal agents that are on the wall. A few years ago, we discovered Isaac Smith from New York City, who was killed in 1792. And then even closer to today, we discovered Sheriff Cornelius Huggaboom from upstate New York, who was ambushed by a group of men disguised as Native American Indians. He was killed in 1791, which makes him the first officer to be killed in the United States that we know about so far. We do have full-time researchers that look back and find historical cases. We wash the walls about 4 times a year, mainly to get any debris off. We use warm water and Dawn soap, the same to save the baby eels and eagles, and yeah, it's a mild soap, so it doesn't affect the wall. It helps us keep it clean, so that people can come and view the names and make etchings and not have to worry about debris.
Oh, I've seen the etchings. That's interesting. So, what are they doing?
So, when the memorial was created, the creators of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial were heavily involved. So a lot of the design it comes from that. The idea of being able to engrave a name comes from that memorial, to etch a name, excuse me. So at the directories, the 4 directories where you can find a name, we also provide etching paper and pencils, so that you can come, and just like you had growing up in grade school where you etched a leaf on a piece of paper, you can put the paper over a name and etch your loved one's or your partner's name and take it home with you. If in the event that you can't come to the memorial, you can always reach out to us. I know it's not the same, but you can reach out to us and we will make an etching for you and mail it to you.
Okay, that's nice.
The walls themselves are about 304 feet long each. There's 64 panels on each side. On the west side, where we are, they run from 1 to 64. And on the east side, they run in the opposite direction. The memorial sees around 400,000 visitors a year, mostly during Police Week. June and July is also very heavy attended, especially because it is School Safety Patrol Month. A lot of people come, since DC is a popular place for conferences, meetings, so they'll stop by while they're here, especially with all the federal agencies in DC if they're coming to meet with them. We'll also have school groups, we'll have tour groups. You can also schedule tours through the website or giving us a call, and we will have a staff member meet you and walk you around and give you some of the more historical names on the walls, kind of a little bit of what we're doing today.
I think I've seen some details on the website, the mleomf.org website, where they can schedule staff, fill out forms, make arrangements.
Yes, it doesn't cost anything. We do, like I said, we have full-time staff, and part of that job is to be able to provide tours, to be here to answer questions to visitors, to help visitors find a name, and also to point directions to wherever they might need to go.
Yeah.
Traditionally, we'll go up and introduce ourselves and say, can we help you? Can we help you find a name? A lot of people being in a major city, they'll say, oh, we're good, we're okay. So what we usually do, what I'll do is say, okay, my name's Brian, and I'll be around. If you need anything, come find me and let me know. And then about 5-10 minutes later, that same group will come up and they'll start asking questions.
Right.
So you want to make them feel comfortable. Usually if they're looking to find a name, we'll bring them over to the name. Once they see it, we'll step back to give the family or whoever space to do their thing. So we'll go over and show you the focal point of the memorial, which is the medallion. For those interested in the trees, these giant trees here are honey locust trees.
Were they planted when the memorial was founded?
Yes. We also plant a few thousand daffodils every year. A few years ago, we did 10,000 daffodils.
Must be beautiful.
So every spring, when the daffodils bloom, it's truly something to see all the yellow all the way around. So here we have our medallion. The medallion bears not only our name, or the memorial's name, but the logo as well, which is the rose and shield. The shield obviously represents law enforcement. The rose represents sacrifice.
Yeah.
Around it, you'll see a ring of ivy. Ivy in Celtic cultures, which historically, the police in the United States was created mainly in Boston and in New York City. Heavily Celtic culture. It's a symbol for growth and new life. The reason they chose that was that a lot of survivors that we found will come here and they'll be at a loss because they, lost a loved one. And they'll come into contact with other survivors who have walked there in their shoes, and they become lifelong friends and they help support each other. So that's the whole meaning behind the growth and new life.
So thanks a lot, Brian. Thanks for your time. Really enjoyed that. It's very informative, and it was good to get a bit more of the context of some of the ideas that are behind this memorial here in downtown DC.